Hello warriors, today we are going to show you if you can defeat an active shooter using a baton. Is it even possible? We'll see. If you were watching this series, you should probably know the basic rules that you need to do. So, we are going to repeat them very quickly. You are still going to be very close to the wall. One hand is still here, the other is holding now a baton. But the principle will be the same. Just take a look. Why should we add a baton to this situation? Well, if this is some terrorist or it's some psychopath, there are very low chances that you are going to be able to knock him out with just using your hands. Even less when you are untrained little girl. So having something like a hammer in your hand changes the completely game. You could be thinking, but I should go for the hands right away. You can. But you have to consider that this is reality speaking. So what can happen is something like this. Only one hand takes the shot, the damage, and the second one is shooting. It can happen. More safer option would be exactly the same like when we didn't have the weapon. So you should strike the head, because this will give him the reason to stop. Either way, if you choose to go with the long side or the short side of the baton, everything will be to your use. Or go for the hands and then take away the weapon. Of course, those are all possibilities that you should consider when you are hitting. The more training, the better you are going to be with actually hitting someone correctly. We are in reality, so what can happen is that there's not going to be only one shooter, but maybe two shooters. So now you're stuck in a position when you have your baton and his gun in your hand. What should you do with it? What was the mistake there? Can you spot it? Well, we basically threw away one weapon and tried to go for the other, but meanwhile we were getting shot. So what do you think is the correct solution with the baton? It will be very hard for the second shooter to shoot you when he's getting hit to the face with something like a steel baton, of course. So use it for short distance, but as well for the long one. You can throw the baton not only in this case, you can do it in, for example, you are in some kind of cover and the shooter is coming close to you and you know the distance is too big between the two of you. So we will just throw it to shorten the distance so we can go to another cover or potentially go at him. We know what to do in theory, now it's time to put it into practice. So how to train? So step one, how do you open the baton? Is it like this? It is probably too loud, the shooter can hear you. So you need to take the advantage of the surprise. So how should you open it silently? Now it's fully open and ready. So you should practice this part first, just how to open the baton silently. Now to practice the actual strikes, you will pick something like a poster that we have right here, so the hits are not going to hurt as much. And you need to train for not just grab and then hit, but you need to train it in one sequence, so it's hit and grab at the same time. It should look something like this. Practice the hits, go to the head, hit him with some clean strikes, practice this part. Because the shooter is probably going to fight back, he can push you, pull you. You will need to know how to strike not even with the long end, but even the short one. Because if we get into some kind of wrestling sequence, there's a big possibility that only the long strikes are not going to be there. So what you need to practice is hitting with the short one as well until he lets go of the weapon or you disarm him. We need to practice the third part as well, which is the disarming. You have two options here. Either you are just going to continue hitting the hands like this, or you can, of course, jump straight away into disarming with the short end of the baton like you saw here in the end. So the throwing of the baton will always be at your side when, for example, it's an open space and you really need to close the distance, but you are way too far, so you just have to throw it. Or like we said before, you chose some cover, you are ready to strike, but he maybe went a little bit further from the cover that you have. So now only option that you have is to throw it and then jump at him. But there are instances where there's a second attacker coming, so you have to throw your baton. The distance between you on open space is way too big and you need to short it by throwing the baton and getting closer. How do we train it? We need to practice every single step, so even throwing of the baton needs to be practiced. You have two options here. Either you are going to throw it from the opening, which will be for much less distance, but you're going to be very good with aiming this way. Then there's the second option, which is this one, which you are going to be able to cover more distance, but you need a lot more training for this, of course. To train it, you will need to set up something like a practice dummy, like we did here, some box and a helmet on it. And now you need to practice from which distance are you still able to hit him. Start with a poster one, because it's going to be a little bit more safe. And as you are training, then you can build your way up to having the steel one. But set your distance for first, and then if you are getting better at it, just prolong the distance as much as you can. Try not to only finish at throwing something like a practice dummy, try to put it in some scenario, some more realistic exercises. But for beginning, this is good, but remember that you need to upgrade your game every single time, so try to put it into some live action. We've been saying the whole time, Baton is the best self-defense weapon. Even in this scenario where there's active shooter, Baton has big thumbs up, because it's going to make the distance for you a little bit better. And if you are going to be very close, you can hit with this like with a hammer. So it will just increase your chances of survivability. Always carrying a weapon is better than having none. Leave us comments what you actually think about the situation. Maybe what weapon will be better here. You can definitely leave us a comment. But for us, that's everything. Leave a like if you did enjoy, and subscribe so you can see even more of this series of the active shooter. And we will see you next time. Bye.